What's up, guys? So UFC 238 just wrapped up and a great card, especially the last few fights really delivered. And we're going to start with that main event. Henry Cejudo defeats Marlon Moraes by TKO in the third round due to ground and pound. Now, this fight was getting really bad for Cejudo. The leg kicks are really damaging him. He didn't really have an answer for the entire first round. He kind of looked lost in there. Even in the second round, he was still doing the same thing. He had that karate stance. Legs were just getting kicked out. Even when he switched, Marlon Moraes did not care. Even kicking the shins of Cejudo, just constantly kicking the legs. And you saw Moraes staying on the outside. Cejudo couldn't do anything. He couldn't cover the distance because Moraes was so far away. He just needed to move a little bit, and Cejudo's completely out of range for anything he's trying to go for. And if he commits more to get in on Moraes, he could potentially get countered, and that's why you saw some of those sluggish exchanges. The power of Moraes was just a little bit too much from the kicks and even in the pocket when they exchange. Henry Cejudo got rocked a couple times in there, especially at the end of the first round, I think it was, with that wild exchange. And then something switched for Henry Cejudo in the middle of the second round. He started to walk down Marlon Moraes, the bigger, stronger guy that's been battering his legs, catching with his hands, shown to be a little bit too powerful, a little bit too big. Even the takedown defense is strong. Cejudo went after that guy, walked him down, and started finding short-range openings. Moraes was countering with these long looping punches. So Cejudo got in close and started landing inside uppercuts, just short hooks on the inside, and winning. And when Moraes is throwing these wide punches, Cejudo was able to grab into the Muay Thai clinch on the inside of the punches and start landing huge knees, and for some reason, Moraes just couldn't get out of it. He didn't really do anything to get out of it. There was really no technical escape. He was just sitting in there getting kneed. Oh, the only thing he was doing was putting his arms up so he doesn't get hit flush to the face. He took some big damage, and you could see him start withering away after that. The pressure and the aggression slowly was breaking Marlon Moraes, which is something I never would think would happen to him. And eventually, Henry Cejudo was able to get it to the ground and just land ferocious elbows, to the point where Marlon Moraes wasn't even defending them. He didn't look completely out of it, but he was not defending the ground and pound at all. Even the Anaconda choke, Moraes just sat in there. He didn't even defend it until like last minute. It looked like Henry Cejudo broke Marlon Moraes' will in that fight. And the heart and will that Henry Cejudo showed in that fight was extremely inspiring. And now he is the double champion. He has the flyweight belt, he has the bantamweight belt. He wants to go up to featherweight sometime in the future and get 3 belts. It's kind of hard to imagine him at 145 because those guys are big, really big. But you never know, man. I would like to see it because it's never been done before. We've never really seen a champion from 2 divisions down go up and fight that champion. It would be something really special, right? But who these guys should be fighting next? For Marlon Moraes, I'd say one of the winners or losers of tonight's card, because he didn't take too much damage to the point where he has to take a long time off. So I would say him versus Petr Yan would be an amazing fight. Both very fun fighters, huge power, great boxers, good wrestlers as well. It'd make it an exciting fight, and if Yan wins that one, I think he should get a title shot. As for Henry Cejudo, it's tough to say. Now he has 2 divisions he can defend his belts, and I think he should go to flyweight to defend his belt next, unless they get rid of the division. If they get rid of the division, it has to be him versus Aljamain Sterling, 100%. If they don't get rid of the division, I say him versus Joseph Benavidez. That has to be the fight that's next, because Benavidez holds a win over Cejudo, and he is the number 2 ranked fighter right now. And then we go to Valentina Shevchenko versus Jessica Ai. I mean, what do you say about this one? Complete mismatch, like we all thought. Everybody in this division is a mismatch versus Valentina, and like I said before she even came into this division with their first fight, she is going to most likely beat Demetrious Johnson's record. I mean, with the streak that she's going to be able to pull off, most likely, you never know, maybe there's going to be a fighter in the future that can deal with her or compete with her, but she's going to smash all records, man. Shevchenko is one of the most skilled fighters in the UFC, regardless of gender, regardless of anything. She is just one of the most skilled fighters. Her technique is so polished. She is so fundamentally sound. She does everything very well, and now she has this knockout power that she didn't have at 135. I mean, knocking out Jessica Ai with a flush head kick. She crow-copped Jessica Ai. That was vicious. That's probably going to win knockout of the year. Shevchenko just kept blasting that left body kick, because they are in opposite stances and stuff, and that eventually just conditioned Jessica Ai to think it was going to come again when Shevchenko threw it high. I mean, it was one-on-one stuff, you know. I feel bad for Jessica Ai a little bit, you know, the knockout was pretty nasty, but it was spectacular from Valentina Shevchenko's side. And who these 2 fighters should be fighting next? Jessica Ai, probably Joanne Calderwood, something like that, because she fought tonight and she lost. And as for Valentina Shevchenko, it probably has to be Caitlin Chukagian, who was the number 2 ranked, beat Joanne Calderwood, so it has to be Caitlin Chukagian. But I don't see anybody in this division competing with Valentina yet. So then we go to Tony Ferguson versus Donald Cerrone. And the fight was pretty crazy. So it started off pretty even. I would say Cerrone probably won the first round. It was hard to really tell. They weren't landing too flush on each other, but I think Cerrone was outlanding Tony Ferguson. And then Tony dominated the second round. He tore Cerrone apart with the jabs. Whenever he got in close, he was throwing those elbows, even the spinning back elbows. He was out-kicking Cowboy Cerrone. A lot of you guys said that was kind of crazy to say Tony Ferguson would try to out-kick Cerrone, and it's exactly what he did. He did the same thing to Edson Barboza. That's the only reason why I said it. I mean, he doesn't care about what your strength is. He's going to try to beat you at that area, and he really landed some big kicks on Cerrone. But a thing that a lot of people weren't seeing in that fight was Tony Ferguson just evading almost everything Cerrone was throwing at him. I mean, his slipping and maneuvering and rolling is so unorthodox, you probably don't think, oh, it's going to be effective. Oh, he's probably getting hit here. But if you really look at the punches getting thrown, they are not really landing. He's rolling his shoulder. He's switching with the kicks, switching with the punches. He's moving his head with the punches just enough so it doesn't land clean. I mean, throughout the entire fight, he was barely getting hit flush. In the second round, Cerrone was kind of just rushing in a little bit too much with the blitzing style combination with his hands, and Tony was doing a really good job of just jabbing and moving away and countering with that insanely long reach. Like I said before, yes, they only have about a 3-inch difference in reach, but the way they throw punches, the torquing, the rotating of the hips, how much they extend, the reach differential is magnified. And it was true in the fight as well. Cerrone does not extend with his punches. He doesn't reach in with them, but Tony does. So that is why Cerrone really couldn't get anywhere near Ferguson in that second round with some of those blitz. And one big thing that Cerrone was doing as well was, whenever he ended his combinations to get inside on Tony Ferguson, he always made a sudden stop and lifted his head up above his hands, and Tony was countering him right after all of those combinations. I mean, the fight was just looking really bad for Cerrone. He got battered badly, and fighting Tony Ferguson is probably the worst opponent you ever want, because you're never going to come out of that fight the same, pretty much. Look at all of Tony Ferguson's opponents. Edson Barboza, beaten to a pulp, cut up badly. Same thing with Josh Thompson. Really got cut up on every side. Same thing happened to Anthony Pettis, and he broke his hand in the fight. Look at Lando Venata. Look at Donald Cerrone. They do not come out of the fights the same. Tony is just on a different level, man. He's just on a different level. Now, let's talk about what happened at the end there. So, Tony Ferguson landed that punch at the end, and it was foul, but it is a bit understandable. You have to understand that they are in a heated fight. They're going back and forth. They were in exchange. They were throwing some big leather at each other. And right after the bell, Ferguson lands that straight right hand. But it was at the complete end of the punch. It wasn't like it was at that mid-range where the full power is connecting. So it most likely wasn't a damaging or a super powerful blow. It was foul. Even on accident, it was foul. But here's the thing. I blame more the ref for not getting in there. You have to know that these guys are fighting each other. Especially with a guy like Ferguson who fights at the pace that he fights. He doesn't stop in fights. He's always throwing. He's always active. So you really have to get in on there to stop the fight in between rounds or finishes when Tony Ferguson's fighting. Because he's active at all times. So Dan Miragliotta, I believe, should have been right in between them. Look at Big John McCarthy. He's always on the fighters. That's why you never see this kind of stuff happen with him. He's very quick to break up fights. And then Donald Cerrone goes and blows his nose and puffs out his eye. And it was really bad. It wasn't like the Eddie Alvarez one, where Alvarez did the same thing and it just slightly puffed it out, like toward the top. This one completely shut Cerrone's eye and there was no opening it. So at that point, it was also his fault for doing that. And people are saying we should do a rematch. Do you really want to see a rematch again? Especially if it's going to be like a 5-round fight. Cerrone was really getting battered out there. He was getting beaten badly. I think this stoppage actually saved him from some big damage in the third. I think it was only going to get worse because the damage he took in the second was going to carry on into the third. In that, he wasn't going to be as strong. He wasn't going to be as sharp or anything like that. And Tony constantly gets stronger throughout the fight. I think, in hindsight, that stoppage saved Cerrone from some major damage. I don't think a rematch is warranted because Tony's just on a different level. He showed it in this fight. He was dominating. The only fight for Tony Ferguson is Khabib. If he does not get that title shot, I don't know what's going on. I mean, what's the point anymore? What's the point even going for title shots? What's the point of getting big fights if a guy like Tony Ferguson, who can go down as the greatest lightweight of all time, right now, you can consider Ferguson the greatest lightweight of all time. if he cannot get a title shot after a 12-win streak against some of the best lightweights of all time. It would just be vile if he does not get a title shot at this point. And competitively, until we see Dustin Poirier fight Khabib and see what Dustin Poirier is made of at the top level of the lightweight division, Tony and Khabib are on their own group. I mean, there's nobody on their level. And I just want to say it again, people are really underestimating Tony Ferguson's striking defense. He does not get hit clean, man. And you think he does because you see him get cracked by Anthony Pettis or Orlando Venata, but even statistically, you can look at it. I think he has like a 60 or 68% striking defense record, which is actually one of the highest in the UFC. And he has a lot of UFC fights against the top-ranked fighters. He just doesn't get hit clean, man. It's unorthodox, it's something you don't learn, it's only what Tony Ferguson knows, and it works. So nobody can really make sense of it. And I saw a couple punches in this one where Tony was lifting his chin above them. It's insane. I don't understand it. But who these guys should be fighting next, like I said, Tony Ferguson, title shot 100%. Anything else is just vile. As for Donald Cerrone, I like to see Cerrone versus Conor McGregor. That'd be a good fight. Cerrone's probably going to take a little bit of time off. But if he wants to wait, probably the loser of Khabib versus Dustin Poirier or something like that. You know, Conor or the loser of that fight, I think is the only thing that makes sense. Losing to Tony Ferguson, especially the way he lost, shouldn't drop him that much in the rankings. And then we go to Petr Yan beating Jimmy Rivera by decision. Now, this fight was kind of weird because Jimmy Rivera was getting the best of Yan throughout the fight until the end of the rounds. Well, the first two rounds, until the end of the first two rounds where Rivera was really just evading those lunging punches. I don't know why Yan kept going to them. Well, that's what I was initially thinking. Like, Rivera is so short, and he's so fast, and he moves really quickly backwards. But he was cutting off angles a lot more, so maybe Yan thought, okay, Rivera's going to keep moving backwards from my lunging, looping punches. But Rivera started cutting angles under them and getting close to Yan. And I would think Yan would adjust to that, but he didn't. He kept throwing the same thing, and Rivera kept dodging them, landing some really good leg kicks, landing that right overhand right through the guard because of the small gloves. And then Yan caught him at the end of the first round. He switched up with it, so he threw a lunging right overhand, switched into southpaw, went with the left overhand as Rivera actually moved back to the cage, and then got dropped, and Yan won that round. By the rules, the most damaging shots, the most effective strikes win you the round. They trump everything else. Then in the second round, more of the same thing, but Rivera actually rocked Yan on the feet. I believe it was a right overhand, was it? I forgot what it was. But then landed some nasty leg kicks. Yan has that boxing stance, that boxing style, really heavy on the front leg, and the leg kicks were just blasting him, man. But then Yan was able to land a right cross that dropped Rivera when Rivera was against the cage. So whenever Rivera was really close to the cage, his movement was completely hindered and his decision-making completely changed. He started to move back to the cage instead of cutting off angles, which is actually the opposite of what you probably want to do because when you're in the center of the cage, you have space to move backwards, right? But in the center of the cage, Rivera was cutting angles. And against the cage, he tried to move back to the cage. It was kind of the opposite of what you would think would happen. But great fight, great performance by Yan, as well as Rivera. Rivera showed to be very skilled out there. You could even say he was probably more technical than Yan was, but Yan was more effective, right? He landed the bigger blows. This is fighting the bigger blows that drop your opponent. If you're able to drop your opponent and almost finish them, I mean, there's nothing that trumps that. No matter the skill, no matter how technical you looked, it doesn't matter. So who these guys should be fighting next should not be a title shot. I think Yan should get one more fight. If he wins that one, gets a title shot. I think he should fight Marlon Moraes. And as for Jimmy Rivera, I would like to see Jimmy Rivera fight John Lineker. I think it'd be an amazing fight. And then we go to Blagoy Ivanov defeating Tai Tuivasa by decision. This fight was kind of a slobber knocker. Not too much technique being shown besides Ivanov's counter right was really getting the better of Tuivasa, and his jab on the inside, even though they're opposite stances, was also landing at will. Tuivasa had some good moments. He did rock Ivanov. Leg kicks were devastating Ivanov, but for the most part, it was just a slobber knocker, just them going back and forth. Their chins are absolutely insane. I don't know how they're able to take all the damage that they dished out in that one. I mean, they were taking flush shots and still walking forward and throwing punches. Tuivasa showed a little bit lack of fight IQ out there when he did hurt Ivanov, and he didn't really try to finish. He just drove it to the cage and just sat there. He let Ivanov rest, where he possibly could have knocked out Ivanov, but he is young. He's like, 25, 26 years old, so he has time to grow. But who these guys should be fighting next? I think Tuivasa versus Augusto Sakai would be the fight that makes sense next. Sakai is the number 15 ranked fighter. Tuivasa is going to drop down below 13 or take the number 13 spot. As for Blagoy Ivanov, if Kane is still fighting, I would like to see that fight. The grappling would be very interesting in that one. or him versus Shamil Abdurakhimov would be a one that makes sense as well. Then we go to Tatiana Suarez defeating Nina Ansaroff by decision, 29-28 in all scorecards. Not much to say about this one. I mean, Suarez just showed to be a good wrestler with decent kicks, and the wrestling wasn't even like super effective in the middle of the octagon. Nina Ansaroff, I think, stuffed 8 takedowns or 9 takedowns. Suarez really gets effective with her takedowns when it's close to the cage. Right, if you're close to the cage, she will drive it there, and that's how she works to get it to the ground. She really tries to step in behind the knee to get you off balance and dumps you the other way. And the ground and pound was not there. Nina Ansaroff had a good guard. Ansaroff is not the best BJJ fighter. She's not the best with positioning. She is definitely elite, but she had enough to stop all the offense from Suarez on the ground. The guard recovery was there, constantly threatening submissions whenever Suarez tried to get past the guard. And on the feet, I mean, it just showed Ansaroff had a better understanding of everything, from movement to cutting off the cage to punching to kicks, everything involved. Suarez didn't even cut off the cage. She was following Ansaroff. And that is why in the third round, she couldn't get Ansaroff to the cage to drive in for a takedown. Ansaroff started landing some kicks, landed I think one spinning heel kick that landed partially, and at the end of that round where Ansaroff started pressuring Suarez, which is the worst case scenario for Suarez, she kind of froze up under the punches. You can tell she is not composed under shots, and it's something we've seen wrestlers before have a problem with. And if it were anybody else, like a Jessica Andrade, like a Rose Namajunas, who definitely has power and snap in their punches, Suarez could have been in big trouble there. And this was a 3-round fight. If this was a 5-round fight with Ansaroff, it'd be really interesting how it would go down. Because as soon as Ansaroff got the cornering advice to get away from the cage at all times, just don't go near the cage, that's when Ansaroff started having major success. But Suarez was able to get the victory because of the first 2 rounds before Ansaroff made the adjustment. And who these fighters should be fighting next? Ansaroff is still one of the top-ranked fighters. I think her versus Joanna would be a very good fight, or Michelle Waterson. I don't think Waterson should get a title shot yet. She's number 7 ranked. She beat Carolina in her last fight. I don't really know how that warrants a title shot when Tatiana just beat Ansaroff. And as for Tatiana Suarez, it depends what happens with Rose Namajunas. If Rose wants to keep fighting, I think Rose should get a rematch, and Suarez should probably get the Joanna fight. So it depends for both fighters here. In that case, if Suarez gets Joanna because Rose is going to keep fighting, Ansaroff should probably get Michelle Waterson at that point. But if Rose decides to retire or not fight for a while, then Tatiana Suarez deserves a title shot against Jessica Andrade. Now, the thing about Suarez is I don't like her chances against the top-ranked fighters. Jessica Andrade, Rose Namajunas, Joanna, even Ansaroff in a rematch, it'd be tough for her because she is pretty one-dimensional. Of course she can adjust, of course she can learn in the future to cut opponents off, and that will make her wrestling a lot more effective. But Suarez was gassing out, or she was getting tired at the 3rd round, and that is super dangerous when you're fighting someone like Jessica Andrade who can go 5 rounds and knock you out in the 5th round. You know what I'm saying? So if that was Andrade having Suarez against the cage like that at the end of the 3rd round, Andrade probably puts her out cold. And if not in the 3rd round, then the 4th and 5th definitely. Rose Namajunas' footwork is just way too good. She would never get pressured by Suarez to the cage, and Namajunas is way too dynamic with her striking. And even if she gets taken down, her BJJ is so high level, it's way higher than Nina Ansaroff's. I think she would be able to hold it in guard, threaten submissions constantly, a lot better than Ansaroff was able to do it. And the power in her hands, as soon as it goes past that 3rd round, I think Rose just dominates. And as for Joanna, it'd be more of the same, except Joanna's takedown defense is better than everybody else in this division. She would really fight off Suarez for the most part of those first 2 rounds, maybe 3rd round, and it would actually get Suarez even more tired in the fight than she was with Ansaroff. And then we go to Aljamain Sterling defeating Pedro Molinos by decision. What do you say about this fight? Sterling just looked amazing. I mean, using his reach to great effect, being very unorthodox, switching constantly, a lot of kicks. Pedro Molinos started landing some devastating leg kicks himself and really good snap kicks to the body that at one point hurt Sterling. But for the most part, Munoz was just trying to brawl. He wasn't really doing much else, just trying to draw in Sterling to a brawl. I think he fell in love of what he did to Cody Garbrandt and brought it into this fight. And it didn't work because Sterling is nothing like Cody Garbrandt. Fights on the outside, very long, elusive, combinations, stays outside of danger, will drive for takedowns, has crazy good submissions himself. And he just outpointed Munoz, had higher fight IQ, and just didn't play a part of that game. So it was a great performance by Aljamain Sterling. And who these guys will be fighting next? For Pedro Munoz? No, it depends what Henry Cejudo is going to do. If Cejudo is going down to flyweight, I would actually like to see Pedro Munoz versus Dominic Cruz if Cruz comes back. Or even him versus Jimmy Rivera would be a good fight. I mean, there's nothing wrong you could do with Pedro Munoz here. And for Aljamain Sterling, I think him versus Rafael Sunsao would be a good fight. A rematch with Marlon Moraes would be warranted. But if Cejudo is going to compete at 135 again, then Sterling deserves a title shot. Alexa Grasso looked great as well, showing some great technique. Just completely polished, destroyed Carolina in all aspects of the game, even in the clinch. But Carolina, something seemed off about her. Like her footwork completely decayed. She just plods now like she's some brute with great power, but she doesn't have that kind of power to take that kind of style. Before, she was very elusive, unorthodox, switching constantly, wide stance. Sometimes sharp combinations with a lot of spinning techniques. I mean, she doesn't fight how she used to. And it's very strange. It might have to do with age, maybe the fact that she's thinking about motherhood and stuff like that, so her mind's a little bit outside the game. She's dropped a lot of fights in her recent career. Calvin Kattar had an amazing win against Ricardo Lamas. First round knockout was devastating, man. Faked coming in off the jabs, got Ricardo Lamas' hands on the inside to parry the shots. Kattar came around with that left hook, right straight, right over the arm of Lamas and put him down. Calvin Kattar is some of the best boxing in the UFC right now. He has one of the best. He's so powerful with it, so sharp. His precision is insane. His targeting is insane. Leg kick defense is his biggest hole right now, and once he gets that patched up, he's going to be a problem for anybody in this division. Anybody. So those are my reactions, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. I'm going to get out some breakdowns on this card tomorrow, so be looking out for those. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.